me, it's what are the next 5 years going to look like? You know, what's it going to look like for this organization? And what are we going to do to make sure that happens? Because those guys in the years 8 through 13 or so, that's where they really cemented themselves in their legacy. And I think that's what I think about, just to be honest with you. I think about that. I think about trying to be the best in the world.
Nick, you've been on this all this season, even most of last season as well, that this Seattle offense isn't really built around what Russell does best.
Yep.
So I ask, are the Seahawks wasting their window with Russell Wilson, if you will?
I can't say they're wasting their window with him because, first of all, I think they're only probably halfway through it. He's finished his 8th season. I bet he plays 15, 16 years at a high level in today's NFL, and the guy who's never been hurt, never missed a game. You have no reason to think he's not going to play a very long time. And, by the way, he just became the first quarterback ever to have a winning record each of his first 8 years. First guy to ever do that, and you've got to give him immense credit for that, and the organization immense credit for putting pieces around him, for never falling off, or even when they are rebuilding, staying competitive, winning at least 9 games. So I do want to give Seattle and Pete Carroll and John Schneider credit, and I think Schneider's one of the best GMs in football. My issue with Seattle, and what you're alluding to is, would they call their offensive game plan any different if Blake Bortles were their quarterback? And I can't see it. They call games like throwing the football is a last resort, like their quarterback is a liability. They call games, to use a more contemporary example than Blake, because he's a backup now, the way you would expect the Titans to. We have a superstar running back and a quarterback, even if his numbers are good, we don't really trust in Ryan Tannehill. But that's the opposite of what they have. They have a superstar quarterback and Travis Homer and Marshawn Lynch is their running back as of late. And so last year, they lose a playoff game, in my opinion, because they did not trust Russell enough. Instead, they just kept running their head into a brick wall against the Cowboys' rush defense. In this postseason, they handed the ball off to Lynch and Homer 32 times for 58 yards. That's, what's less than, what, 1.8 yards per carry?
Not good.
It's horrible. Their best rusher was their best passer, was Russell Wilson. And so I don't want to be too harsh because I think they have a great organization. I think Carroll, holistically, for everything he does, is a really good coach. But they need to modernize their offense around the fact that they have one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the world for them right now, in the apex prime of his career. And to me, they didn't throughout the regular season. They got away with Russell Wilson pulling him out of the fire in close games. And they certainly didn't in that playoff loss to Green Bay, where once again they were like, well, if it's close late, Russell will save us. But then forget the player's name, he dropped the pass on 1st and 10, and then Russell, their like 3rd string wide receiver, dropped the pass on 1st and 10.
Yeah.
And then they end up having
Malik Turner.
Yeah. Thank you, Canty. He has that drop, and Russell gets sacked, and all of a sudden, when you're trying to win by those margins, one drop pass, one bad sack, and you lose a football game that maybe you shouldn't have lost. So I do think they need to adjust that considerably, but rinse, repeat. We could be playing the same segment from a year ago after the Cowboys game when I was saying the exact same thing.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to be overly critical of the Seattle Seahawks just because they've had a lot of success. I mean, almost unprecedented when you think about it. What, they've made the playoffs 7 out of Russell Wilson's first 8 seasons.
And the one year
you got 2 Super Bowl appearances. You got 1 championship. So it's hard for me to say that they're wasting him. I think Pete Carroll, in a roundabout way, is trying to protect his quarterback, because when you're paying your quarterback $35 million a year, you're going to have some deficiencies elsewhere in the roster. And one of the places that Seattle has historically struggled with in the Russell Wilson era is up front with the offensive line. So if you have a bad offensive line, do you really want to be a volume passing team? Do you want Russell Wilson to drop back and throw it 35, 40 times? Probably not. And that's why I think they lean toward this heavy run-oriented offense. And, oh, by the way, they're also trying to retool the defensive side of the ball because they don't have the Legion of Boom anymore. When you start paying your quarterback, guess what? You're going to lose on some other pieces, and I think a lot of that had to do with their secondary. If you look at what happened after Super Bowl 49, they started slowly but surely removing pieces off of that defense, and now I think the only remaining stalwarts are K.J. Wright and Bobby Wagner. So it's going to take some time. There is some ebb and flow in terms of roster construction and throughout the life of a quarterback in the National Football League. I just think that Russell Wilson is going through it what other quarterbacks go through. Aaron Rodgers has gone through it at times. Tom Brady has gone through it at times. So it's not like it's something that the other elite quarterbacks haven't faced. Heck, I think even Drew Brees had a 3-year stretch where they were on the outs and they were 7-9. So it happens with teams. But what separates Russell Wilson is he finds a way to keep his team consistently competitive and each and every year vying for a postseason berth.
And listen, and again, this is why I don't want to be too harsh on the Seahawks. I mean, they get DK Metcalf in the 2nd round. They get first-round pick for Frank Clark, but then acquire Clowney for, a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. They make these moves where organizationally they never bottom out. They don't have the years like you're talking about in New Orleans. I think it's a great organization. And I think Pete Carroll, throughout the 7-day work week, is a great coach. But on game day, you mentioned you don't want to risk your most expensive asset. And I always joke with you, give you a hard time because I'm a little jealous that as a retirement gift to yourself, you bought yourself a Bentley. And I bet you were real cautious with it. But you still drove it. Yep. You weren't like, well, it's so expensive, I'm just going to leave it in the garage. You gave Russell Wilson $35 million a year
to
use him. And if you're going to be cautious with him, take him out for a spin in the damn playoffs. Right. How about then? How about if you get to the playoffs doing it that way, in the playoffs say, Russ, we're handing you the keys, figuratively, and go win us this game. They do that as a last resort far too often.
But like Canty, you said, it is impressive to see how much they have been able to accomplish using Russell Wilson the way they have and the people that they've obviously
And they've never bottomed out. They deserve
that close, that short last year. The next step is to get to the Super Bowl. And so we understood that going into this season, but we know it's a long season. We know it's a process. We know that day by day we have to get better. And I think that's what this team is great at, is just getting better every single day and then going out and fighting to the end every single opportunity we get.
Nick, is there any chance, any chance at all, that the Chiefs could lose this game against Tennessee?
No. And I know some reaction might be, wait, they played a couple months ago and the Titans beat them. And they did. And it wasn't, Mahomes was back and Mahomes was sensational. And the Chiefs still lost that game. Different teams, different situations. One, that game was in Tennessee. Secondarily, Derrick Henry was excellent in that game, but not the reason why Tennessee won the game. Despite him being excellent, Tennessee was dead. They were 4th and 17, failed, Chiefs ball, down 5, minute 55 left, and then everything but yakety sack started playing for the Kansas City Chiefs as they invented a way to lose that football game. But I want to talk about Derrick Henry for a moment because I know what people say. Oh, the path is the Titans win time of possession, Titans run the football, Chiefs can't get on the field. While Derrick Henry has been on this historic run, the Titans have not been winning time of possession. They are, since week 10, 2nd lowest time of possession in football. It's odd. It's not what you would think. You would think they're running the ball, but that's not the case. What is the case is on their scoring drives, they're having long, drawn-out drives, but also having a lot of 3-and-outs mixed in there. And as the Chiefs demonstrated 2 days ago, with their offense clicking the way it is, you better get to 30. And the Titans are not going to get to 30 on the legs of Derrick Henry. They are going to have to try to get to 30 on the arm of Ryan Tannehill. And to that I say, good luck. And if you do it, I will tip my cap to you. The Chiefs right now are the best team in the NFL. The Titans are coming off an excellent 3-game stretch. And this is where it ends this weekend. In the game they beat the Chiefs earlier this year, there's a defensive score. There were the odd stuff at the end. It's not duplicable. What the Chiefs did against the Texans is duplicable in this regard. Just keep scoring touchdowns. Have the best quarterback with the best skill position talent in football. Keep scoring touchdowns. Canty, the only way I think you can slow down the Chiefs' offense is if you have a dominant pass rush. I don't think it's about whether you play man or zone because you don't have enough people to double Kelsey and Tyreek Hill. That's what happened with Houston. The Titans do not have a dominant pass rush. I don't see their path to victory.
They didn't have a dominant pass rush throughout the regular season, but their pass rush looked pretty good on Saturday night against Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense. And I'm with you in terms of the Titans with their path to victory has to be trying to win time of possession. More importantly, limiting the possessions of the Kansas City Chiefs, because if you talk about the Chiefs having double-digit drives in this game, then you're probably talking about a Titans L and the Chiefs punching their ticket to go to Super Bowl 54. But in terms of what they've done well since they've gotten into the postseason, the Titans have been incredibly opportunistic. You look at their win last week against Baltimore, and on every turnover that Baltimore had, they capitalized and they scored touchdowns, whether it were takeaways